My name is Sarah Rodriguez, and I've been running emergency calls in Portland for 8 years. My partner David and I work the afternoon shift, overdoses, heart attacks, domestic disputes. You think you've seen it all until you haven't. We've talked down jumpers from bridges, performed CPR in crack houses, and held the hands of dying strangers who had no one else. In this job, you develop a sixth sense about people who's genuinely in crisis, who's seeking attention, and who's lost touch with reality. But there's one psychiatric call from last August that rewrote everything I thought I knew about this job. It was supposed to be routine, a man having a breakdown, refusing help, the usual dance we do with mental health emergencies. What would you do if someone told you they were being watched, but everyone around you said it was just paranoia? The morning started like any other Tuesday. David was already in the ambulance when I arrived at 7 a.m., nursing his third cup of coffee and complaining about his ex-wife's lawyer. At 42, David had seen enough broken people to fill a small city, and it showed in the permanent lines around his eyes and the way he approached every call with professional detachment. "Sleep okay?" he asked, not really listening for an answer. "Better than most nights." I settled into the passenger seat and checked our equipment inventory. "What's the weather looking like?" "Sunny, 75 degrees. Perfect day for crazy people to lose their minds." I should have called him out for that comment. But after 8 years of partnership, some battles aren't worth fighting. David wasn't cruel, he was just tired. We both were. The first few hours brought typical calls. A fender bender on Burnside, where nobody was hurt but everyone was furious. An elderly woman with chest pains, who turned out to be having an anxiety attack about her grandson's deployment. A construction worker who'd sliced his hand open on a saw blade and kept apologizing for bleeding on our equipment. By lunch we'd handled 6 calls and were grabbing sandwiches from a food truck downtown when the radio crackled to life around 3:15 p.m. Unit 22, Priority 2 Psychiatric Emergency. Male, 28 years old. Manic episode with threats of self-harm. Address is 1847 Hawthorne Boulevard, Unit 4A. David sighed and crumpled his sandwich wrapper. There goes lunch. Hawthorne was trendy territory. Coffee shops, vintage stores, young creatives, paying too much rent for tiny apartments with exposed brick walls. Not where you'd expect anything too dark to unfold in broad daylight. I'd responded to calls in this neighborhood before. Usually overdoses at parties or alcohol poisoning from craft beer festivals. Another psych call. David muttered, already reaching for his clipboard. Fourth one. This week. Must be something in the water. The building was a converted warehouse. All exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. 3 stories of gentrified apartments, where artists and tech workers lived side by side in uneasy harmony. Officer Rebecca Martinez was waiting for us on the sidewalk. Someone I'd worked with before, solid and thorough. She'd been on the force for 12 years and had a reputation for actually caring about the people she encountered. But even she looked unsettled today. "What's the situation?" I asked, grabbing my medical bag from the back of the ambulance. Patient's name is Alex Chen, 28, diagnosed bipolar, then off his meds for 3 weeks according to his brother, who called it in. Landlord called after neighbors complained about screaming and, well, you'll see. "Threats of self-harm?" David asked, pulling on his gloves. "Nothing specific, but he's barricaded himself in and won't come out. Keeps talking about being watched. Classic, paranoid episode." We climbed 3 flights of stairs, our equipment bags clanking against the metal railings. I could already hear his voice echoing down the hallway, not screaming, but talking rapidly to himself in English, and what sounded like Mandarin. The sound reminded me of my grandfather during his dementia episodes, except this voice was young and desperate. The apartment door was cracked open, just enough to see inside, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Every single window was covered with thick, black garbage bags, duct taped to the walls with military precision. The place felt like a cave. Dark, airless, oppressive. Furniture was barricaded against the windows. Books and papers scattered across the floor like a tornado had torn through someone's library. "Alex," I called gently through the crack. "I'm Sarah, a paramedic. Can you come talk to us?" The rapid talking stopped immediately. After a long pause, a voice responded from somewhere deeper in the apartment. "How many of you are there?" "3. Me, my partner David, and Officer Martinez. We're here to help." "No. They'll see me if I come out. The cameras are watching." David was already filling out involuntary transport papers, his pen moving efficiently across the familiar forms. After 8 years of psychiatric calls, he had the routine down to a science. But something in Alex's voice made me pause. It wasn't the rambling incoherence I usually heard during manic episodes. There was a clarity to his fear that felt different. "Alex, what cameras are you talking about?" I asked, ignoring David's warning look. "The ones across the street. He's been watching me for weeks." Officer Martinez exchanged glances with me. Standard paranoid delusion. Someone's always watching, always plotting. We'd heard variations of this story dozens of times. "Can you tell me who he is?" I continued. "I don't know his name, but he lives in the building across the street. 3rd floor, corner unit. He has equipment pointed at my windows. Professional equipment." David tapped his watch impatiently. "Sarah, we need to get moving. I've got the 550 paperwork ready. Just give me a few more minutes. He's clearly having a psychotic break. The sooner we get him to the hospital, the sooner he can get help." But something about the precision of his fear bothered me. Most paranoid patients I'd encountered had elaborate, impossible conspiracy theories involving government agencies or alien surveillance. This was specific, localized, almost plausible. After 20 minutes of coaxing, Alex finally emerged from the bedroom, and my breath caught. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His black hair was disheveled and greasy. His clothes hung loose on his diminished frame, and his hands shook like autumn leaves. But his eyes were sharp, alert, terrified, yes, but tracking everything, missing nothing. "Are you alone?" he whispered, scanning our faces and then checking the hallway behind us. "Did anyone follow you here?" "Just us, Alex, Officer Martinez, my partner David, and me." He nodded, but kept glancing at the covered windows, like something might burst through at any moment. His behavior reminded me of a combat veteran I'd once treated. Hypervigilant, constantly scanning for threats. "When did you stop taking your medication?" David asked. Pen poised over his clipboard. 3 weeks ago. Had to stop. They were using it to track my brain chemistry. The lithium creates a signature that shows up on their equipment." "What kind of equipment, Alex?" "The man in the building across the street. He has cameras, but also other things. Listening devices, maybe thermal imaging. I can feel when he's watching me." I found myself walking to the window he was pointing at, carefully peeling back a corner of black plastic. The late afternoon sun was blinding after the cave-like darkness of the apartment. Across the narrow street stood another converted warehouse, maybe 60 feet away, close enough to see into someone's apartment if you really wanted to. "That window there," Alex whispered beside me, his breath hot against my ear. 3rd floor, corner unit. That's where he sets up during the day." I stared at the window he indicated, just glass and curtains, like any other apartment. But as I watched, something glinted, a brief flash like sunlight hitting metal or glass. Could have been anything. A mirror, a picture frame, someone's laptop screen. "David," I called quietly, "come look at this." "Sarah, don't," he warned without looking up from his paperwork. "That's textbook enabling. Don't validate paranoid delusions. We've been through this training." But I saw it again, that flash of light, and this time, the unmistakable silhouette of someone standing back from the window. Just for a second, then gone. "There's definitely someone there," I told David. "You're seeing what he wants you to see. Confirmation bias. We need to transport him now before this escalates." But before we could argue further, Alex grabbed my arm. His grip was ice cold and desperate, his nails digging into my skin through my uniform sleeve. He started a month ago, first just watching with binoculars during the day. Then he got bolder, started taking pictures with a telephoto lens. Last week he started using a laser pointer to draw patterns on my walls at night. Red dots moving across my ceiling while I tried to sleep. Geometric patterns, like he was trying to communicate something. The detail was too specific, too strange to be a typical paranoid delusion. Most patients I'd encountered stuck to vague threats, shadowy government agents, or nameless persecutors. This was oddly mundane and precise. Have you called the police about this before? Officer Martinez asked. Twice. They said without evidence, there wasn't much they could do. The first officer told me to get my medication adjusted. I looked at Officer Martinez, who was frowning thoughtfully. Could we have someone check that apartment? Just to be sure? David stepped between us, his face flushed with frustration. Absolutely not. We're not wasting city resources on. That's when the lights went out. The apartment plunged into darkness, so complete, it felt solid, like black water closing over our heads. Only thin slivers of daylight leaked through the plastic-covered windows, creating an otherworldly twilight. My heart hammered against my ribs as I fumbled for my flashlight. Power outage, David announced, trying to maintain his professional calm. He controls my electricity, Alex whispered in the darkness. He's done it before, always in the afternoon. Always when I'm trying to rest. That's impossible, I said, but my voice shook. One person can't control someone else's power from another building. Unless they have access to the electrical systems, Officer Martinez said quietly. These old buildings sometimes share infrastructure. My flashlight beam revealed Alex pressed against the far wall, his eyes reflecting the light like an animal's. He was tracking something we couldn't see. His head tilted as if listening to sounds beyond our range. Officer Martinez was already calling for backup when we heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, purposeful, getting closer. The old wooden floors creaked under deliberate weight, each step echoing in the narrow corridor. He's coming, Alex breathed. He's never come over here before, but he's coming now. The footsteps stopped directly outside the door. We all held our breath, listening. Then came a voice through the door. Friendly, concerned, completely normal sounding. Alex? It's your neighbor from across the street. I saw the power go out and wanted to check on you. Make sure you're okay. The voice was warm, educated, tinged with what sounded like genuine concern. The kind of voice you'd trust to help change a flat tire or carry your groceries. Alex's reaction was immediate and visceral. He pressed himself against the wall so hard I thought he might try to push through it. His entire body shaking so violently, I could hear his teeth chattering. Don't let him in, he pleaded, his voice barely audible. Please, don't let him in. You don't understand what he's capable of. Officer Martinez drew her weapon, keeping it low but ready. Sir, this is Portland Police. Please identify yourself and state your business. Oh, thank God you're here. I'm Thomas Blake from Unit 3C across the street. I've been worried about Alex for weeks. He's been having some kind of breakdown, screaming at all hours, covering his windows, paranoid behavior. I was hoping someone would finally intervene. He sounded so reasonable, so genuinely concerned, the kind of neighbor you'd want looking out for you. But Alex was looking at me with pure, animalistic terror, mouthing the word no over and over. Sir, we're going to need you to step away from the door, Officer Martinez commanded. Of course. I just want to help. Alex has always been such a quiet guy. It's heartbreaking to see him like this. But he didn't move. I could see his shadow under the door, shifting slightly, but remaining in place. You don't understand, Alex whispered so quietly I had to lean in to hear him. When the police knocked on his door earlier this month, I watched through my peephole. His apartment, it's not normal. I could see inside when he opened the door. The walls are covered with photos. Photos of me. Photos of other men in the neighborhood. My blood turned to ice water. Are you certain? I know how it sounds. But I saw them. Hundreds of pictures. Some taken with telephoto lenses from his window. Others looked like they were taken from inside apartments. Like he'd been inside when people weren't home. Officer Martinez's radio crackled to life. Unit 15 to Unit 22. We've got a warrant for apartment 3C, AT55 Hawthorne. Going in now. That's his apartment. Alex whispered. We waited in suffocating silence. Alex seemed to be holding his breath. His eyes fixed on the door, where Thomas Blake's shadow still lingered. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Then the radio exploded with static and urgent voices. Unit 15, you need to see this. The place is set up like a surveillance center. Multiple cameras pointed at the building across the street. Recording equipment, telephoto lenses, and hundreds of photos of the target and other men in the neighborhood. I felt the world tilt sideways. Everything I thought I knew about this call was wrong. We've also found what appears to be electronic listening devices and transmitting equipment. Looks like he's been monitoring audio from multiple apartments. There's also evidence of breaking and entering, lockpicks, copied keys, photos taken from inside residences. Copy that, Unit 15. Any sign of the suspect? Negative. Suspect Thomas Blake is no longer in the apartment. Place looks like he left in a hurry. We don't know where he went. The shadow under the door suddenly disappeared. The footsteps started again, but this time they were running. Boots pounding against wooden floors, in rapid retreat. The friendly, concerned voice was gone, replaced by something cold and furious, echoing from the stairwell. Alex, I know you're in there. You've ruined everything. Do you have any idea what you've done? 2 years of work. Destroyed because of your paranoid fantasies. The fire escape, Officer Martinez commanded. Now, we got Alex out through the fire escape just as Thomas Blake forced open the front door. I could hear splintering wood and his voice rising in fury as we climbed down the rusty metal stairs. The 3-story descent felt like the longest minutes of my life. Every shadow in the alley could have been him waiting. Every sound could have been pursuit. David went first, then Alex, then me, with Officer Martinez bringing up the rear, her weapon drawn and ready. Alex moved with surprising agility, despite his weakened state, driven by adrenaline and genuine fear. My car, Officer Martinez directed as we reached the alley. Everyone in. As we drove toward the hospital, I watched Alex in the rearview mirror. The terror was leaving his face, replaced by something that looked almost like relief. Not the manic relief of a psychotic break ending, but the profound exhaustion of someone who had been proven right after weeks of being told he was wrong. At the hospital, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the head of psychiatric services, explained what we'd witnessed. Stalking victims often develop genuine psychiatric symptoms as a result of chronic harassment and gaslighting. If he was already vulnerable from being off medication, the stress could have triggered a full manic episode. But that doesn't mean the persecution wasn't real. So he was having real psychiatric symptoms, but they were caused by a real external threat? Exactly. The paranoia was actually hypervigilance, his mind trying to protect him from a genuine danger. His decision to stop taking medication might have been the only thing that kept him alert enough to recognize the threat. But the covering of windows, the isolation, completely rational responses to being systematically stalked and monitored. He was trying to protect himself the only way he knew how. Officer Martinez found us finishing paperwork around midnight. Thomas Blake was in custody, she reported, arrested as he tried to flee the city. They'd found evidence of a 2-year stalking operation targeting 6 men in the neighborhood, all between the ages of 25 and 35, all living alone. The most disturbing part, Martinez continued, is that he'd been calling in false psychiatric reports about his victims, trying to get them committed so no one would believe them if they reported the stalking. He'd done it to 2 other men before Alex. How long had he been targeting Alex specifically? Based on the photos and surveillance logs we found, about 8 months. He kept detailed records: when Alex left for work, who visited, even what he ate for dinner. He'd been breaking into his apartment when he wasn't home, moving things around, leaving subliminal signs that someone had been there. David, who had been unusually quiet during all of this, finally spoke up. How did he cut his power? Old building, shared electrical systems. He'd gotten access to the basement utility room and installed remote switches. Could control power to specific units from his phone. I visited Alex a week later at his brother's house in Northeast Portland. His medication had stabilized his mood. But more importantly, the paranoid thoughts had vanished completely. With the real threat eliminated, his mind could finally rest. The worst part wasn't being watched. He told me as we sat in his brother's backyard, sunlight filtering through normal uncovered windows. It was having everyone think I was crazy when I knew something real was happening. When you can't trust your own perception, and nobody believes your perception anyway, you start to feel like you're disappearing. Did you ever doubt yourself? Every day. Especially when the police and the first paramedics who came dismissed everything I said, I started wondering if I really was losing my mind. That might have been the cruelest part, making me doubt my own sanity when I was actually the victim. He showed me the photos the police had recovered from Thomas Blake's apartment. Hundreds of images taken with telephoto lenses through his windows. Alex cooking, reading, sleeping, changing clothes. Others taken from inside his apartment when he wasn't home. There were also photos of 5 other men, meticulously cataloged and organized. He'd been planning to escalate, he said quietly. The police found detailed plans for getting inside when I was home. If you hadn't believed me that day, I thought about how close I'd come to dismissing him completely. How David had been ready to transport him involuntarily without investigation. How many other victims had we failed to protect because we assumed their fears were delusional? What made you trust me? I asked. You looked. When I pointed to his window, you actually looked. Instead of just telling me I was imagining things. That was the first time in weeks that someone treated my fear as potentially real. That case changed how I respond to every psychiatric. I learned that people with mental illness can also be victims of real crimes. That sometimes what looks like paranoia is actually a mind desperately trying to process an impossible situation. That our job isn't just to transport patients to hospitals, but to listen to what they're really telling us. 3 months later, I drove past Alex's old building. The windows of his former apartment were uncovered now, bright and normal looking. A young couple had moved in. I could see their plants on the windowsill and colorful curtains framing the glass. But apartment 3C across the street remains empty. Officer Martinez told me later that the landlord had tried to rent it twice, but both potential tenants had backed out after seeing the surveillance equipment damage and the hundreds of nail holes in the walls where photos had been mounted. The landlord says he can't find anyone willing to rent it. Some spaces once contaminated by obsession and violation seem to resist returning to normal. Have you ever been in a situation where no one believed you but you knew you were right? How did that feel? What would you do if you discovered that someone you'd dismissed as delusional was actually telling the truth all along? Because this story taught me that sometimes the most unbelievable truth is hiding behind what we assume is madness. And sometimes the person everyone thinks is crazy is the only one seeing clearly. Thomas Blake was sentenced to 8 years for stalking, breaking and entering, and harassment. 3 of his other victims came forward during the trial, each with similar stories of being dismissed as paranoid when they tried to report his behavior. Alex moved to Seattle and started a support group for stalking victims who've been misdiagnosed with psychiatric disorders. Last I heard, he was working with police departments to train officers on recognizing the difference between paranoia and hypervigilance. David and I still work together, but he asks different questions now on psychiatric calls. We both learned that believing someone doesn't mean accepting everything they say without question. It means treating their fears as worthy of investigation rather than automatic dismissal. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply look when someone asks us to see what they're seeing. Because the difference between paranoia and reality might be nothing more than whether someone is willing to check if the threat is real. Thank you all for being a part of these journeys with me. Your continued support truly means the world, and I absolutely enjoy reading your comments, especially when you share your own experiences and reactions. If these tales had you holding your breath or sent a chill down your spine, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more eerie and unsettling stories. Have you ever gone through something similar, or do you have your own mysterious encounter to share? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to read it. Every story you share helps deepen the connection in our growing community of horror lovers. There's more to come, so stay close for more chilling tales. And remember, the most terrifying stories are often the ones that feel a little too real. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.